When my mom called me last spring to talk about our annual family vacation, I didn't think much of it at first. We've always gone somewhere together since I was a kid, whether it was a road trip to the mountains or a week at the beach. I'm 24 now, so of course things have changed over the years, but my parents, my younger brother, and even extended relatives like my aunt and cousins still try to plan something together at least once a year. This time, though, the conversation with my mom felt different, though I couldn't quite place why until later. She told me that they were thinking about renting a big house by the coast for 2 weeks in July. She sounded excited, talking about the ocean views, the little seafood restaurants nearby, and how the cousins could all stay under one roof like we used to when we were kids. I listened and waited for the part where she would ask about my availability, since I have a job and usually need to plan around it. But instead of asking, she paused for a long time, almost as if she didn't know how to say what came next. Finally, she cleared her throat and said, "So, about this year's trip, we thought maybe it would be better if you sat this one out." At first, I thought I misheard her. I laughed a little and said, "What do you mean, sit it out? Like just come for a shorter time or something?" But she didn't laugh. She sounded serious. "No, honey, I mean not coming at all this year." I was completely stunned, and for a few seconds I didn't even know how to respond. We had never skipped a family vacation before, not once, and especially not because someone was being asked not to come. I asked her why, and her explanation was vague at best. She said something about how the dynamics had been tense last year and how maybe a little space would make things easier for everyone. The more she spoke, the more confused I became. Last year's trip hadn't been perfect, sure, but there hadn't been any huge fights, nothing that stood out in my memory as a reason for me to be excluded. I pressed her, asking if someone specifically didn't want me there, and she just repeated, "It's just better this way. You'll understand eventually." I was shocked, hurt, and honestly embarrassed. I couldn't believe my own family was going on vacation without me. I hung up after telling her I needed time to process. For the next week, I went over everything in my head, replaying the events of the last trip to see if I'd missed something obvious. The only thing I could think of was a minor disagreement I'd had with my brother Ethan about who was going to use the car one evening. But that had blown over in minutes. Surely that couldn't be the reason. I thought about my cousin Lily too, who tends to stir up drama, but I hadn't had any issues with her either. The more I thought, the less sense it made. And the strangest part? No one else in the family reached out to talk about it. Normally, my aunt or even Ethan would mention vacation plans in our group chat, but this time the group was silent toward me, as if I wasn't even part of the plan anymore. My texts about normal day-to-day things still got replies, but anything related to summer plans was ignored. That silence spoke louder than anything my mom had said. Eventually, curiosity and frustration got the better of me, so I called Ethan directly. At first, he pretended like he didn't know what I was talking about, but when I pressed him, he finally admitted that things would just be less complicated without me there. I asked what that was supposed to mean, and he just said, "Don't make this harder than it already is, okay?" That line stuck with me. Harder for who? And why was I suddenly the complication? At that point, my feelings shifted from hurt to suspicion. Clearly, there was something going on that no one wanted to tell me. But what could it possibly be? Why would my whole family shut me out without giving a straight answer? I started to wonder if there was some secret, something they were keeping from me that they didn't want me to stumble across on this trip. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit, though I still couldn't see the full picture yet. But one thing was clear, if they thought excluding me would make me stop asking questions, they were wrong. Because now I needed to know the truth more than ever. After that strange call with Ethan, I couldn't shake the feeling that my family was deliberately hiding something from me. The more vague they were, the more suspicious it felt. I told myself I wouldn't obsess over it, but of course, that's exactly what I did. I began noticing little things I hadn't paid attention to before. For example, my aunt usually posts every detail of her life on Facebook, from what she cooks for dinner to random shopping trips. She had gone completely silent about the vacation, which was odd because she'd normally be bragging about booking flights or choosing matching swimsuits for the kids. Then there was my mom, who started cutting calls short whenever I asked too many questions. One night, when I called to chat, I heard background noise, laughter, clinking glasses, and when I asked if she was at a family dinner, she hesitated before saying it was just a quick bite with a friend. Except I could swear I heard Ethan's voice in the background. It felt like everyone was tiptoeing around me. By June, when the vacation was only a month away, I was completely in the dark. Nobody had said a word about the location, the house, or the dates. I knew they were still going because my cousin Lily slipped once and posted a picture of a suitcase with the caption, "Can't wait for July." The post disappeared within an hour, but I had already seen it. The secrecy only fueled my determination. I wasn't planning to crash their trip or make a scene, but I needed to know why I was being excluded from something I had always been part of. At the end of June, I finally got my chance. I went over to my parents' house unannounced one Saturday afternoon, partly to visit, partly to snoop. They weren't expecting me, so when I walked in, I could tell right away they weren't happy to see me. My mom's eyes widened, and she quickly closed her laptop as if she didn't want me to see what was on the screen. I pretended not to notice and chatted casually for a while, asking about work, family, and the dog. Eventually, I excused myself to grab some water from the kitchen, and that's when I noticed a stack of printed papers sitting on the counter. The top page was an itinerary, and my heart dropped when I read the title, July Family Beach Vacation. There it was, right in front of me, the official plan. I skimmed the page quickly, my pulse racing, and saw the names of everyone listed under guests. My parents, Ethan, my aunt, Lily, her parents, even two distant cousins I barely knew. But not me. My name wasn't there. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My mom came in just as I was putting the paper back. She froze when she saw me looking guilty, and I realized she knew exactly what I'd seen. Before she could say anything, I asked, "Why am I not on that list? Why won't anyone tell me what's going on?" She looked torn, as if she wanted to tell me but couldn't. She sighed and said, "It's complicated, sweetie. It's not about you, not really." That phrase, "not about you," made me even angrier. How can it not be about me when I'm literally the only person being left out? I shot back. She shook her head, tears forming in her eyes, and whispered, "It's for your own good." I didn't understand. How could being excluded from my own family possibly be for my good? I pressed her, but she refused to explain further. My dad stayed silent the entire time, staring at the floor like he couldn't bear to look at me. The guilt in his expression only confirmed my suspicion. They were hiding something big, something I wasn't supposed to know. I left their house feeling more alienated than ever. That night, I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for answers anymore. If no one was going to tell me, I would have to find out on my own. I started digging. I checked social media accounts, old group messages, even airline websites to see if I could guess the flight they had booked. It took hours, but eventually, I pieced together enough hints to figure out the destination. They were headed to a beach town 3 states away, a place we'd never been before. The house was apparently huge, with private access to the shore. I sat there staring at the information I'd gathered, my mind spinning. Why was this trip so secret? Why was I singled out? At that point, the only explanation I could come up with was that they didn't want me to find out something I might accidentally uncover if I were there. That thought kept me awake at night. And the more I obsessed, the more determined I became to discover the truth. By the time July rolled around, I had made a decision. If my family wouldn't tell me why they excluded me, I would go there myself and see. Not to confront them, not to ruin their vacation, but to finally get the answers they refused to give. What I didn't realize then was that what I'd discover at that beach house would change how I saw my family forever. The drive to the beach house took nearly 7 hours, and with every passing mile I kept asking myself if I was doing the right thing. Part of me felt guilty, like I was invading their privacy, but another part reminded me that I was part of this family too and had a right to know why I was suddenly treated like an outsider. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I packed a small bag, booked a cheap motel about 15 minutes from the beach, and told my coworkers I was taking a few days off. My plan wasn't fully formed, I just knew I needed to see it with my own eyes. When I finally arrived in town, I drove past the address I had found. The house was enormous, perched on a hill overlooking the water with huge glass windows and a wraparound balcony. Several cars were parked out front, all familiar. I recognized my parents' SUV, Ethan's new car, and even Lily's bright red convertible. My chest tightened as I realized they were all inside, living the vacation I had been excluded from. I parked further down the road and just watched for a while. The first person I saw was my dad, carrying a cooler out to the porch, followed by my mom setting up chairs. They looked relaxed, happy even, nothing like the anxious faces I'd seen when I last visited them. A few minutes later, Ethan came out laughing with Lily, tossing a football back and forth. I expected to feel rage, but instead I felt an emptiness, like I was watching a life I no longer belonged to. I didn't approach them that day. Instead, I went back to the motel and tried to think rationally. I needed a plan. Barging in would only cause a scene, and I didn't want to give them an excuse to paint me as the problem. The next morning, I returned early and parked nearby again. This time, I walked along the beach, keeping my distance, but close enough to see them. That's when I noticed something strange. A woman I didn't recognize was with them. She wasn't part of our family, at least, not anyone I'd ever met. She looked to be in her late 40s, with long dark hair, stylish clothes, and a confidence about her that made her stand out. She was helping my mom carry groceries, chatting with Ethan like they'd known each other forever. At first, I thought maybe she was just a friend or a neighbor, but as the day went on, I realized she was more than that. She was in nearly every interaction, as if she belonged there, as if she was part of the family. I couldn't shake the unease creeping over me. Who is she? Why had no one mentioned her? Later that afternoon, when the group went down to the beach, I got a clearer view. She was standing next to my dad, laughing, and for a split second, I saw him place his hand on her back in a way that didn't look casual. My stomach flipped. I told myself I must be imagining it, but the more I watched, the more convinced I became that there was something between them. I went back to the motel restless and angry. If this woman was who I thought she was, then maybe the whole reason for my exclusion wasn't about me being difficult or tense, but about them hiding her presence. But why keep it from me specifically? Why was I the only one not invited? The next day, I decided to get answers. I waited until evening, when I saw most of the family heading down to the beach for a bonfire. Only a few people stayed behind at the house, and I used the chance to get closer. I walked up the road, heart pounding, and stood near the gate, hidden behind some bushes. From that spot, I could see into the lit living room. And there she was again, the woman sitting at the table with my mom, both of them deep in conversation. My mom looked tired, almost sad, but the woman was calm, collected, like she was in control of the situation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read enough of their body language to know it was serious. That night, I barely slept. My head kept spinning with questions. Was this woman my dad's affair? Was the whole family in on it? Did they think excluding me would prevent me from finding out? And if so, why me? Why not Ethan or Lily or anyone else? What made me the one they needed to keep away? By the fourth day, my curiosity had turned into obsession. I knew I had to speak to someone directly, but I didn't want to confront my parents right away. So, I waited until I saw Ethan alone, sitting on the porch scrolling through his phone. I gathered my courage and walked straight up the driveway. His eyes widened when he saw me, and he immediately stood up. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, lowering his voice but clearly panicked. "I could ask you the same thing," I shot back. "Why am I the only one not invited? And who is that woman?" His face turned pale. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just looked around like he was afraid someone would overhear. Finally, he muttered, "You're not supposed to know." "Not yet." That sentence sent chills down my spine. "Not supposed to know what?" I pressed him, but before he could answer, my mom appeared in the doorway. She froze when she saw me, her expression a mix of shock and resignation. And that's when I realized whatever the truth was, it was about to come out, whether they liked it or not. The moment my mom saw me standing there with Ethan, her whole body stiffened. For a second, she didn't say anything, just looked at me like she was trying to figure out whether to yell, cry, or pull me inside before anyone else noticed. Finally, she whispered sharply, "Come inside." Now. Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but he followed us in. My mom shut the door quickly and drew the curtains, as if she was hiding me from the outside world. The silence was suffocating. She leaned against the wall, staring at the floor, and then said quietly, "You shouldn't have come here." My voice shook as I answered, "Why not? Why am I being treated like I don't belong in my own family? And who is that woman?" At the mention of the woman, my mom's eyes flickered, and Ethan shot her a nervous glance. I knew I had hit the nerve I'd been circling around for weeks. My mom finally sat down at the table, her hands trembling. "Her name is Maria," she said softly, like saying it out loud carried weight. "She's someone important to your father." My stomach dropped. The suspicion I'd been dreading was suddenly real. "Important how?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mom didn't say it directly, but she didn't need to. Her silence, the way she avoided my eyes, told me everything. Maria was my dad's affair. I felt my chest tighten with anger and betrayal. "So, everyone just knows about this?" I asked, my voice rising. "You all just decided to take a family vacation with Dad's mistress and leave me out because I'd ask too many questions?" Ethan tried to calm me down, saying, "It's not that simple." But I snapped at him, "It's exactly that simple. You all covered for him, and I'm the one who gets cut out." My mom reached across the table, her voice desperate. "Listen to me. We didn't want you here because you're the one person who wouldn't have played along. You're the one who would have called it out, who would have forced a confrontation, and we couldn't. We couldn't have that right now." Her words stung, not just because they were true, but because they revealed how my family saw me, as the one who ruined the facade, the one who wouldn't stay silent. I asked her, "So you'd rather protect him than be honest with me?" She shook her head. "It's not about protecting him. It's about keeping the family from falling apart completely. Your father made mistakes, terrible ones, but Maria isn't just some random woman. She's been part of his life for a long time. Longer than you know." That last part hit differently. "What do you mean, longer than I know?" I demanded. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and my mom's face went pale. She whispered, "She's been around since before you were even born." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? My voice came out barely above a whisper. "Are you telling me Dad's been with her for over 20 years? My mom's silence was the confirmation I didn't want. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Ethan muttered, "This is why we didn't want you here. We knew you'd push until you found out." I felt dizzy. My dad had been living a double life for decades, and everyone seemed to know except me. My own family had chosen to exclude me rather than let the truth come out naturally. It was like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I stood up, pacing the room, my anger bubbling over. So all those vacations, all those times we were supposed to be this happy family, he was with her too? And you all knew? My mom shook her head quickly. "Not always. I only found out years later. But once I did, we had a choice: pretend for the sake of stability or blow everything up. And I chose stability. We all did." The betrayal cut deeper with every word. Not only had my father betrayed my mom, but my mom had betrayed me by keeping it secret, by making me the problem for refusing to play along. "And what about me?" I demanded. "Did anyone think about how it would feel for me to be the only one in the dark?" My mom's voice cracked as she said, "We were trying to protect you." But it didn't feel like protection. It felt like erasure. Like they had written me out of the family picture because I refused to smile while everything crumbled behind the scenes. At that moment, the front door opened and I froze. My dad walked in, carrying firewood, with Maria right behind him. They both stopped cold when they saw me standing there, my face flushed with anger and betrayal. My dad's expression shifted from shock to dread in seconds. He set the wood down slowly and said my name like it was a question, like he couldn't believe I was really there. "And Maria?" She didn't flinch. She didn't look guilty. Instead, she looked at me calmly, almost curiously, as if she had been waiting for this moment. The silence in that room was so heavy I thought I could hear my own heartbeat. My dad's face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin line, but Maria was the opposite. She stood tall, her arms crossed, like she was bracing herself for a storm she had already anticipated. I broke the silence first. So this is what the big secret was? This is why I wasn't invited? Because you didn't want me to see your mistress sitting at the family table. My voice shook, but not from weakness, from fury. My dad tried to speak. It's not that simple, but I cut him off immediately. It is that simple. You cheated on Mom for decades, and now you're parading her around like she belongs here while I get shoved aside because I wouldn't play along. My mom put her hands over her face, and Ethan muttered my name, trying to calm me down, but I couldn't stop. You all lied to me. You all made me feel like I was the problem, when the real problem has been sitting right here all along. My dad's voice was low, strained. Enough. You don't understand everything. I shot back. Then make me understand, because right now, all I see is my entire family choosing her over me. That was when Maria finally spoke. Her voice was steady, measured. It's not about choosing me over you. You deserve the truth, even if they weren't ready to give it to you. My eyes narrowed. And you think you're the one who's going to give me the truth? She nodded slightly. Because no one else here will. I looked at my dad, expecting him to shut her down, but he didn't. He just stood there, defeated, like the fight had already drained out of him. Maria took a breath and said words I'll never forget. I'm not just your father's partner. I'm your father's first family. For a second, I didn't understand. The words didn't register. Then it clicked. She wasn't just saying she was an affair. She was saying something much bigger. First family? I repeated slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. Maria looked me straight in the eyes. I have a daughter. She's older than you. And she's his. My legs nearly gave out. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. You mean? I have a sister. I asked, my throat dry. Maria nodded. Yes. And she's known about him her whole life. My dad finally stepped in, his voice rough. That's enough, Maria. But it was too late. The truth was out, and no amount of damage control could erase it. My world spun as I tried to process. All those years, all the vacations, all the times I thought we were just a normal family, he had another child. Another life. And I had been kept completely in the dark. Why didn't anyone tell me? I demanded, my voice breaking. My mom whispered, because I didn't even know at first. I found out later, after you were born. By then, the damage was already done. Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't even look at her. I turned to Ethan. And you? Did you know? He shifted uncomfortably, guilt written all over his face. I found out a couple years ago. Dad told me when I started asking questions. But he swore me to secrecy. He said you'd take it the hardest. That broke me. My own brother had known, and instead of telling me, he just went along with the lie. My dad stepped closer, his hands raised slightly as if to calm me. We weren't trying to hurt you. We wanted to wait until you were older, until you could handle it. I shook my head. Older? I'm 24. You had more than 2 decades to tell me, and you chose to keep lying. And then you punished me for being the one who wouldn't stay quiet. Maria's calm voice cut through the chaos. They excluded you because they were afraid. Afraid you'd see me. Afraid you'd ask the questions they didn't want to answer. But you deserve to know your sister exists. She's not here this week, but she's very real. My heart pounded in my ears. I couldn't believe it. Somewhere out there, I had a sister, someone who shared half my DNA, and my family had decided I didn't deserve to know about her. My mom was crying openly now, my dad was silent, and Ethan just stared at the floor. For the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't belong in that house, not because of what I had done, but because of the choices they had made long before I was born. I took a step back, toward the door. I can't do this right now, I said. I can't even look at you. My dad tried to stop me, reaching out, but I pulled away. Don't, I said sharply. Don't touch me. Don't tell me it's for my own good. You've all been lying to me for years, and I'm the one paying the price. I opened the door and stepped outside, the humid night air hitting me like a wave. Behind me, I heard my mom call my name, but I kept walking. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there another second. The truth had finally come out, but instead of answers bringing clarity, it left me with even more questions. Questions about who I really was, what my family actually meant, and whether I could ever forgive them for making me the last to know. I walked down the road away from the house, each step heavy, my mind reeling with everything I had just learned. The waves crashing against the shore should have been soothing, but all I could hear was Maria's voice repeating in my head, "She's his. She's your sister." The motel room felt like a refuge when I finally got back there, but it didn't silence the questions tearing me apart. I barely slept, and when the sun rose, I knew I couldn't leave things unfinished. I had to decide whether I was going to confront them one last time or cut myself off entirely. By mid-morning, I found myself back near the house, watching from a distance. Everyone looked so normal, Dad grilling, Ethan tossing a ball with the kids, Mom setting the table, Maria chatting with my aunt like she belonged there. And maybe she did. Maybe she had always belonged in a way I didn't. That thought made my stomach twist. Finally, I took a deep breath and walked up the driveway. Conversation stopped as soon as they saw me. My mom's face softened with relief. Ethan looked nervous, but my dad's expression was unreadable. I didn't yell this time. I didn't cry. My voice was calm but firm. "I'm not here to fight. I just want to understand." Why me? Why was I the one who wasn't allowed to know? My dad set down the spatula, wiped his hands on a towel, and for the first time since this all started, he actually looked me in the eyes. "Because you're the one most like me," he said quietly. The words confused me. What does that even mean? He sighed. "You don't let things go. You don't accept half-truths. You would have dug until you found out everything, just like you did. Ethan, he could live with it. Your mom made her peace. But you? You'd never stop. And I was afraid of how much you'd hate me when you knew." I felt a lump in my throat. "And you thought excluding me, lying to me, would make me hate you less?" He shook his head slowly. "No. I thought it would buy me more time." That admission broke something in me, because it was the most honest thing he'd said throughout this entire nightmare. For once, there was no excuse, no attempt to make it sound noble. Just fear. I turned to my mom, who was silently crying again. "And you? Why did you go along with it?" She whispered, "Because I didn't want to lose what little we still had. If I told you everything, I was afraid you'd never look at any of us the same again." Her words hit me like a cruel irony, because that's exactly what had happened. I looked at Maria, who was still standing off to the side, arms crossed. "And what about her? Where does she fit into all this?" Maria didn't flinch. "I've been in the shadows long enough. Your father has divided his life for too many years, and we're all paying the price. I didn't ask to be hidden, and neither did my daughter. But at least now you know the truth." The mention of her daughter, my sister, reignited a spark of anger. "Where is she?" I asked. Maria studied me for a moment, then said, "She wanted to come. She wanted to meet you. But your father thought it would be too much for you all at once." I stared at my dad. "Too much for me, or too much for you? Because you can't face the mess you created." His silence was my answer. I realized then that if I wanted to know my sister, I'd have to do it myself, without his permission, without the family's blessing. I told them flatly I deserved to know her. I deserved the choice you all took from me. My dad tried to protest, but I cut him off. "I'm not asking for your approval. I'll find her. I'll talk to her. And whatever happens, it will be on my terms, not yours." For the first time, Maria's expression softened, almost like she respected me. "Her name is Isabel," she said quietly. "She lives 2 hours from here. If you want, I can give you her number." My dad glared at her, but she didn't back down. And in that moment, I knew she was right. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me and the sister I never knew I had. I took a deep breath. "Then give it to me." The air was thick with tension, but I didn't wait for their blessing. I got the number from Maria before leaving. My family called after me, my mom begging me not to go, Ethan saying I should wait, but I didn't stop. Back in my car, gripping that number in my hand, I felt something shift. I still didn't know if I could ever forgive my dad, or my mom, or even Ethan. The betrayal was too deep. But I also realized that for the first time in weeks, I had a choice. I could keep being the outsider, the one excluded to protect their lies, or I could step into the truth and decide for myself what family meant. That night, sitting in the motel, I dialed the number. My hands shook, my heart pounded, but when a woman's voice answered, saying, "Hello," I knew I was about to start a chapter that was entirely my own, one my family could no longer control.